Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the overwhelming response you have provided on the technical seminar series from Reinbrücker with respect to the performance optimization on the ERP perspective. For the benefit of upcoming audience, we would be recording this session. I have a couple of points to make by default. All the audience who are in the program would be muted. You can push your questions through the Q&A window on the top hand left corner of the uh, window. And the moderators, staff of Reinbrücker, please go on mute and you can unmute when you are talking. And the other audience, you would note a button on the left hand side bottom called More, where you have a conserve bandwidth. If you can click this particular link, there could be a optimized rendering if you have a lower bandwidth. So that's the preliminary instructions to the entire members. Thank you very much. And next slide, please. Today's topic is Epicor ERP Performance Management, Approach, Tools, and Techniques. We have our speakers today, Ramachandran Raghavendran, who is Head of IT Infrastructure, Reinbrücker Consulting, Nitish Ramanathan, who is a Solution Architect, and myself, Srikanth Ramakrishnan. I would be moderating this discussion on this specific topic. And overall agenda of today is we would give you a 2 minutes overview on Reinbrücker, what we do and what is our specialty, the profile of our speakers. The third item is why ERP performance is very important from a business performance standpoint. What are the key considerations for performance tuning? How Reinbrücker as an organization can bring value to this particular context and help our esteemed customers. And we take 2 or 3 case studies, which is a real life example that we have attended, the high profile examples from the past. We would be explaining and discussing those points. And we would also take you through a very interesting case study where we have made Epicor ERP on top of our Reinbrücker cloud, and the Epicor ERP is available over a cloud, which is completely planned, demonstrated, and commissioned by Reinbrücker for the region, entire Middle East region. So this case study also we would discuss, and we'd be ready to receive questions if you have anything very specific. Next slide, please. A very brief note about the speakers of today, Mr. Ramachandran Raghavendran. He has more than 2 decades of experience in infrastructure specific to IT and performance tuning. He has complete enterprise infrastructure management expertise, multiple data centers, and very large-scale business continuity programs. He has participated involving thousands of users, spanning across 2 decades of career. His personal interests are leveraging AI and natural language processing for effective data processing and intelligence evaluation. The speaker number 2, Mr. Nitish Ramanathan, who is a solution architect on the Reinbrücker Consulting, has close to a decade of experience in Epicor and Microsoft technologies. His experience spans across multiple segments in terms of technical consulting, hardcore development, performance optimization, troubleshooting, and hardcore Epicor as a ERP, how it functions internally. These are the important information he brings through, and he will be taking few topics onto his hand. Myself, Srikanth Ramakrishnan, I am heading the channel development for Reinbrücker. We are an esteemed partner of choice of Epicor. We have won different international partner of award, and we have been entrusted with the responsibility to build a channel network in Middle East, and we are successfully onboarding nearly 10 partners across this region, and I am heading the whole channel management program, And I have done this in the past in different organizations, setting up Center of Excellences for Epicor, and I would leverage the same experience to build similar Center of Excellences nearly to 10 different partners of Reinbrucker who would be selling Reinbrucker's products and services in this market. To give you a brief overview about Reinbrucker, next slide, please. Reinbrucker has a very strong footprint across Middle East and Africa. It's a European company with a global mindset. And we have a very strong distribution network, as I explained, and we are in the process of onboarding partners across this region to provide world-class services and consulting to this region. That's our core focus. We are having a very clear strategy in terms of providing a completely connected enterprise by means of leveraging our IT development capability on top of Microsoft technology. We have a very clear methodology in terms of delivering our projects, in terms of the project management methodology, a very unique model called scale methodology specific to ERP implementation with a predictable outcome. And we have ITAL and PMP certified members who can manage the overall delivery program. We have delivery centers across the globe from Europe, Middle East to India. We have very strong delivery centers across these regions to provide the services to our market, esteemed customers. We do have over 250 associates working globally to service our esteemed customers. We have our cloud products and practices, as I have explained initially, and we have a very strong consulting team who can completely deliver your world-class capability on the ERP and IT solutions. As of today, we serve one of the top 5 customers from the Fortune Global 500 companies, and we have, as I told, we have a state-of-art delivery centers across Cologne, Germany, Dubai, and Chennai. Next slide, please. From a capability perspective, we are into 4 pillars, wherein pillar number 1 is on the ERP capability, where we are international certified partner of year 2 consecutive times, and we provide our consulting ability on our Epicor ERP to global customers through our Center of Excellence as a vehicle, a special purpose vehicle created to build capability on the product from very old days, and we carry more than 300 years of experience delivering Epicor-based solutions. We do have product development capability in terms of Merlin and Expensa. We have our own intellectual property rights on these 2 products, and we also have a Microsoft technology center who cater IoT and mobility-based solutions. We also have business intelligence and analytics on this particular Center of Excellence to provide solutions on top of Epicor. Last not but the least, we do have a very small and boutique consulting company where we leverage our supply chain expertise across the globe and manufacturing expertise across the globe. A very small team based out of Europe. We would bring industry experts to provide consulting on very strong business line of business. So those consulting we do with our partners. So these are the 4 pillars of excellence we do. Now I would let the experts to take this from here over to Rama. Rama, kindly take it forward and share the knowledge with the esteemed audience. Thank you.
Next slide, please, Nitish. Thank you very much, Sri, for the kind introduction. Hello, everybody. I am Rama. Once again, welcome to this webinar on Epicor Performance Management. We are very excited to share our knowledge and experience that will help you in managing the performance of your Epicor systems. Next slide, please. What we will do is we will cover some high-level process aspects that will go into the setting up of the environment from scratch. We will then dwell upon a few very important technical parameters that will deliver the eventual performance. And then we will discuss a few real-life engagements, and in between, Nitish will touch upon the component architecture, etc. Next slide, please. Let's now try to understand the very basic question. Why is Epicor ERP performance important? Next slide, please. Businesses, they spend a lot of effort in analyzing their business processes, modeling how these should look like before they make a decision on buying an ERP product. As we all know, this is a time consuming and a laborious process involving several teams putting in so much of hours. Hence, it is important at the end to have an optimally performing Epicor application that can help to realize the expected benefits in quality and productivity. A poorly performing application can have an adverse effect on the user morale and can also impact the user adoption negatively. That's the reason why the underlying infrastructure should be planned well, designed, deployed, and configured in a proper manner. Next slide, please. Now let us dwell upon the process that will help to deliver infrastructure required. Next slide, please. There is not one single silver bullet that can solve the performance issues in the Epicor ERP application. It is more an issue of getting a set of fundamentals right. We have been in many crisis meetings with our customers related to performance. Looking back, in almost all cases, the fix has been mostly on the fundamentals of the infrastructure and application management. What are the fundamentals? This can be the following: assessing and selecting the type of application delivery that suits your user location, assessing the service requirements, for example, the availability. Some customers would like 100% uptime. Some customers are okay with a periodic downtime every week. And then the requirements regarding data protection. What are your wishes surrounding the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective? These things should be considered in the infrastructure design. Once those things are dealt with, the next step is to getting the key infrastructure grades right. By grades, I mean the processor, the storage, and such. We will come to a bit more details on this later. And then comes the sizing of the infrastructure deployment correctly, considering the number and locational spread of the users. And once the infrastructure is deployed, there is a question of maintaining it in a proper manner. And also, we need to review and revalidate the infrastructure deployment on a periodic basis. We will touch upon that in a bit more detail in the next slide. And lastly, we need to manage the code that is deployed into it. These should be well tested, both from a functional and a performance point of view. Next slide, please, Nitish. Let us now dwell upon two simple infrastructure design patterns. What you're seeing here is the so-called single server deployment. It is suited for a small user base of about 15 to 20 users. As you can see here, all the architectural components are deployed onto a single server. This could be a physical machine. Next slide, please. What we are seeing here is the multi-server deployment. On the right, you have the database server hosting all the database related components, i.e. the main ERP10 database, the SSRS instance, and the reports database. Moving to the left, you have the ERP server, which hosts the website, the process server, and the task agent. And moving further to the left, you have a choice of clients. There is the smart client that is deployed directly on the user's laptops or desktops, and the application can be accessed through that. Some customers, they choose to access the application through a virtualized app delivery platform like Citrix, Parallels, etc. Now, the choice really depends on the kind of WAN connectivity you have with the end users. For WAN latencies less than 60 milliseconds, Smart Client is good enough. If the WAN latency is anything more, we recommend that you use a virtualized app delivery like Citrix or Parallels. Now, let us also touch upon the key infrastructure parameters here. Epicor needs a very good processor, a CPU delivering a baseline clock speed of at least 3 gigahertz for the app server. It needs a low latency network connectivity between the servers, preferably less than zero point 0.8 milliseconds. And it needs a very good storage, a storage with a good throughput and a low I/O latency. We prefer it to be at least SSD. Next slide, please. Now, we need to review the performance every now and then. As you can see, the application keeps on changing over its life cycle. When do we need to review the performance? We need to do that at every key milestones. Milestones can be onboarding a significant number of new users, adding new user sites, major upgrade of the Microsoft platforms or the product, if that's what you choose to do, implementation of major integrations, adding major new features. All these are key milestones, and these should be preceded before and after by a thorough review of the infrastructure. Why do we need to do this review? These milestones can possibly place a load onto the infrastructure, and this load can result in user complaints of sluggish performance, system crashes, broken or frozen technical processes. The infra resources, i.e., the CPU, memory, storage, and network can get overloaded. If you have a monitoring system, this can trigger a lot of alerts from the monitoring system. And we have seen systems where you got too many alerts which overwhelm your technical staff. The obsolete versions of OS and SQL can lead to performance stability and security issues. Non-standard deployments and configurations can remain in the environment unidentified, causing more instability. This can potentially leave you in a state of firefighting. That is the reason why it is very important to review the infra deployment periodic basis and at key milestones. Next, Nitish will give you an overview on what constitutes in this review. He will also take you through the component architecture and also explain the key platforms and technology involved. So in this next 2 slides, you can appreciate the width and depth of the skills needed to support the Epicor application. He will also touch upon how we can help you in this journey. Nitish?
Thank you so much, Raman. Now that I'm controlling my slide myself. Right. So Raman has actually talked about what is the basis or what are required for you guys to have a minimum or bare minimum requirements in terms of the disk or the latency or the clock speed of the processor. That ways you can appreciate the fact that that's how the product is designed. Now, talking about the deployment and maintaining an infrastructure, generally, after the milestones, we recommend to run the PDT's server config check modules and see if the infrastructure passes the test of various parameters which is resulted there. Now, measuring the current performance and comparing with the benchmark in the Epicor performance tuning guide would definitely help you to put your systems in a healthy fashion. Now, how do you maintain the infrastructure? That's another big question. How often would you like to do certain activities? It's so important that when Microsoft releases a patch versions in the operating system level and on the SQL level, both obviously operating system and the SQL is going to check that there is an update available sometimes, but it's so important we need to check that information and try to patch the OS and the SQL on a timely manner. Also, it's great to have a good backup plan for the SQL. A typical plan can be, for example, a T-log backup for every 30 minutes, a daily diff, and a weekly full. Also, incorporate a robust weekly maintenance plan for the SQL and apply relevant security policies. And these will help you to figure it out that how well you maintain the infrastructure, resulting in terms of making your PDT checks and etc. passing. Moving on to the next slide. Well, now let's talk about the sweet spot, the Epicor component architecture. Now, we'll get an overview of how does the Epicor component architecture look like. We'll also give you an overview of the platform, the technologies involved, and the skill required to build and maintain these components. The Epicor ERP application consists of the following components. You have a client. That's your first component. This is the Epicor client. It's the visual representation of the application presented to the end users. And that's when the end users see basically the place where they enter the data. Now the second component what I'm talking about is an Epicor 10 application server. This is an application server in this case, also called as an app server by some of my colleagues. It manages a specific instance of the Epicor ERP application, such as configure the licenses, configure or create the companies, maintain the sessions, and the users for the specific database. It handles the business logic, determining how the incoming data interacts with the Epicor database and then displays on the end user interface. Each application server interacts with the virtual directory. Notice, as you can see, the client interaction is always with the Epicor application server. Now let's move on to the next process server. It stores the metadata and the object definitions required to generate a report or probably run a database processes. For example, if you submit an invoice report or schedule an MRP, these execute on the process server. Please note, the process server can be in application server for small deployment, which you have seen before. Task agent is another component in here. It's so important. It is essentially a Windows service that handles all scheduled tasks within the Epicor ERP application. So anytime you try scheduling certain reports or scheduling any of the items which is available to schedule in Epicor ERP, such as PO suggestions or MRP, etc., even a multi-company, it generally goes, task agent manages those by looking into the schedules that's defined on the system agent screen in Epicor. Now here's a key component in administration setups called this Epicor Admin Console or Epicor Administration Console. This is used to manage the Epicor ERP application. As you know that it can help you to create the app servers, create the databases like the demo database or a fresh database, and also it helps you to create the enterprise search servers. And the next component in this is basically Epicor 10 database. It is a logical disk that contains your Epicor data. As simple as that. It's a straightforward design. Now the next component is Microsoft Reporting Server. A Microsoft Reporting Server is a service that handles the data rendering, data delivery tasks for SQL Server reporting services. This is essentially the Microsoft's native component. Next is Epicor SSRS dataset databases. You might have noticed the pattern that when you try deploying an application server, there will be another database that will be linked with an application server. This is exactly that. Now, each report must contain a dataset that holds the data pulled up by a query from the Epicor ERP database. The dataset consists of a query, it can have a collection of data parameters, or it can have filters, or it can also have other data options which we specify in our submission. This dataset defines the data that displays in the rendering report. However, if you notice the pattern that when you press the print or preview button in Epicor, it actually creating a temporary dataset that go fall sit on this particular databases, and then SSRS engine will read the dataset using a specific GUID specified in there and render the report in the format which you basically requested, such as PDF, XML, or Excel, Word, etc. Our system administration course covers these subjects in detail if you would like to go deeper into the subjects. In order to get the best performance, staying on the same slide, however, in order to get the best performance and best values out of your investment, the IT team will need the following skills, or the team who's handling the whole product would need the following skills. From an infra perspective, I could say that it requires an ADDS, DNS, Kerberos, IIS, networking, application delivery controllers such as load balancers, firewalls, debugging tools like sysinternal suites or Wireshark frame and crash dump analysis, even the smallest Windows event logs, even the PDT analyzing skills, including interpreting the data using various tools. We have our in-house tools which we developed to analyze and interpret the whole chunk of data that produces by Epicor logs. Now, from an application perspective, it's so important that we need to have an SQL administration, a TSQL programmer, or C# or VB.NET programming, a LINQ programming, Infragistics in some case, SDKs in some case, and then it moves into the rest, SOAP, OData, integration platforms, iPaaS, SSIS. There are many, including the content management or including the business intelligence tools, etc. This definitely can go on. Now, how can we help on this? As shown in the previous slide, there are several skills needed to design, deploy, configure, and operate the infrastructure application that will help towards a better performance management and an end user satisfaction. Out of our experience, what we basically find, or what the common challenges faced by customers are, often a smaller IT department, usually dealing with many applications at a time. It's almost difficult to find one or two people who can manage the whole range of platforms and technologies. The limitation of Epicor specific knowledge and skills related to infra and solutions, obviously. Limitation of time to carry out deep analysis. Limitation in supporting the full Epicor infra and the development stack. So important that Epicor is a variety of skills required in that angle. And obviously limited programming experience and skills. And definitely a lack of time. At times like today that most of the customers' IT departments are trying to restore many of their services as possible because many of their users are connecting from home. So they wanted to have a greater connectivity, etc. So those sort of scenarios is what we're in Reinbrück can basically help. Now, how can we basically help to overcome these challenges? We have been supporting Epicor application and infrastructure for at least a decade. Over probably for many, many global customers. We have a width and depth of the skills demanded by the Epicor architecture. We also have a culture of sharing, documenting our experiences for the continuous learning. All of our experiences captured in a knowledge base and execution methodology, which has got richer by time. This helps to deliver right solution to our customers very quickly. Especially, we have got a lot of in-house tools for load testing, regression testing, and data mining programs just to analyze the logs which is being generated by the tools natively provided by Epicor. Automation of operations and maintenance as well. Expertise in the security assessment and implementing the remedies such as CIS standard implementation and penetration tests. Experienced team of developers on Epicor and ancillary products. A variety of people working on the variety of technologies. Proven experience in helping customers to gain better performance in Epicor and its ancillary softwares. And that said, we are a very full package of partners who can design your infra to deliver the proper solution and provide you a very premium level of support. Now, let's move on from the 360-degree performance tuning to the impact of development efforts on performance management. Because it's so important that how you basically has to review these items. Now, Epicor is very popular among developers as a result of very established framework. It gives you the ability to customize the product whichever you want, which is really good. If not designed carefully, we have seen many cases this can lead to a serious problem or serious performance impacts. If it is running a race, for example, the number one spot goes to none other than probably, I would say that the number third position, I'll start with number third, that makes sense, yeah? So number third position will generally go to the customizations and custom stored procedures. And it's so important for the fact that people write customizations. Obviously, it's required. It's so important. And if you write a customization that's executing in the client side of the system, so you don't really see much of a problems in it. But however, this could potentially cause an issue if you basically believe that if you've written a customization wrongly. Now we're going to give the number 2 spot to BPMs. It's because of its nature that people. So I'm going to qualify the BPMs as typical precedents over the in-transaction directives than method or standard directives. It's because in-transaction can possibly go to your database directly hit. So an infinite loop or a bad design of that particular BPM can definitely cause a spike in your CPU. That's why creating an issue for the entire resource pool who's connected to that particular application server. Now, coming to the number 1 spot, a drum roll, it goes to none other than BAQs. This is also because BAQ is the backbone of many things such as dashboards, reports, custom searches, etc. Now, considering the BAQ is very easy to design as per the architecture, and in fact, it does not require a lot of knowledge on the SQL query side as well, because it has got its own IntelliSense, which will essentially try to join together when you try to put 2 tables. So there are many things where the system automatically taken care of when you try to design it, which is really positive things for customers and really positive things for the partners not to understand the complete nuances behind it. But however, notice the fact that when you're not creating a BAQ, you're also creating a query in the background. If you design it poorly, it can potentially break the SQL. Can you believe that? We've seen it. I've also written a blog on a very fundamental and key perspective of how BAQ query execution plans, I call it as BAQ query execution plans. You're more than welcome to look into our blogs. I will paste the URL in the Q&A session after this so that you can take a look in it. You may also notice some more interesting topics in the Rainix blog. We have a lot of blogs in there, so we'll consider those as your bonuses. Now, moving to case studies and in real life stories. Rama, would you like to talk about that?
Thanks, Nitish. Can you go to the next slide, please? Thanks, Nitish. Right. We had this global on-premise customer run into performance issue after adding 2 new sites. It's about 150 concurrent Epicor licenses, 250 users, and 500 GB was the size of the database. They had 4 sites, and they added 2 new sites, and they were getting a lot of complaints from the users, both from the new sites and from the existing sites. And the complaints were all nothing specific. People attaching screenshots saying system not working, and very, very generic in nature. So this was a voice of customer challenge. We had to identify what parts of the system was causing issues. We took all the help desk tickets that was logged in this context, and we applied NLP techniques and found out the top 3 pain points as expressed in those tickets by the users. But we had to validate this. So what we did was we set up a robotic process automation suite in every major site. This will mock an end user and started executing the transaction as in the top 3 pain points in the help desk tickets. And we measured the actual performance. With that, we were able to zero into those menu options and technical processes which was causing grief. And then we went on down to the analysis chains. What we found out was that the 2 new servers, the 2 new sites was sitting along with another site in the same time zone, and the Citrix servers were heavily overloaded. So the recommendation was there to increase the number of Citrix servers. There was another one thing that we found out in the help desk ticket analysis was a lot of slow logons was passing out as performance issues, but actually the system was slow to log on. The reason behind that was the Citrix profile servers were far away from the Citrix client servers. So we asked the customer to redeploy the Citrix profile server closer. That solved the logon issues. And we also found out that the antivirus was slowing down the client processes in the Citrix client servers. We asked the customer to code the exclusion rules. With all these actions, the performance improved and the complaints reduced vastly. The second thing, this is again a global customer, a leader in the cement and mining industry, and they ran into issues after moving their Epicor infra to Azure. System was slow overall. There were sporadic complaints, and as usual, nothing very specific coming out, but the IT management was worked up. So they engaged us. This was a data collection and analysis challenge. We had to straight go on to the heartbeat side of the system because all the sites were reporting issues. So we turned on the variety of logging at the operating system and at the product level. We ended up with logs with about 15 million rows. So we need to consume the logs. That was the next challenge. So we had our special tools based on Python to cut this data, model it, segment it, and visualize it. So we were able to derive a lot of intelligence out of that Python tool. And we found out that the root cause was related to networking. The servers were very far away, and the CPU in the app server needed an upgrade in the clock speed. And the customer implemented those things. And when we reran the logs, we saw the timings improved. And there were also a few programs which needed code optimization. A few BAQs that Nitish mentioned were a bit too poorly designed, and they had to be optimized. After doing all these things, the customer was happy, and the system performance improved overall across all sites. Nitish, do you want to touch upon the other two?
Why not? Why not? We've done a lot, but we only asked God for. Right. So this is one of my customers who's an APAC based, and they were trying to register an issue in their different sites. For example, they started enrolling in the international sites such as Europe and some other part of the world, and they were having some challenges in terms of performance complaints coming only from that particular sites. However, what we did is, as a part of our exercise, we generally try to check the sanities in all the sites, essentially starting from the APAC site itself. And surprisingly, what we figured out, the fact is that they were actually having troubles even in the APAC. However, the users was happy at that point in time with the performance of Epicor, but we were trying to knock down that part, and then we told them, you can get a better performance with the infrastructure of what you have. So we've basically tuned a lot of things in it in terms of what they have designed it not really good, and changed the solutions on that standpoint. And then we basically be able to get a better processing speed and in their APAC side itself, not just the international. But the problem with the international was the delivery. So they have to choose. Epicor also has to. You also need to understand the fact that you need to choose the proper protocol bindings or the endpoint bindings to get into the correct delivery standpoint. So we were able to do that on the different sites, and then we were also able to tune. However, the customer didn't have a complaint in the APAC sites, but we were tuned, and they were extremely happy with the fact that we corrected, which they have been not told us. Now, there's one. I'm sorry. There's one customer in Americas who were basically registered the complaints in fewer sites of them, something like very similar. But the point is, in that case, it was definitely delivery standpoint. So we were able to compare between. We took a lot of logs in terms of how they actually process in Epicor. Figured it out. There seems to be a change of the solution. Sometimes people go distracted because Epicor is really a big product. You can achieve the functionality by different ways. So we were able to tune the solutions that's given to the customers. We were also able to modify their codes in terms of how they wanted to pitch into the systems, etc. And again, it leads into the point where their delivery is not correct to the end users. So we recommended the sites which is going to that direction to change it to one of these presentation layers, such as Citrix and Parallels. And then once they got in there, then they were like quite happy. They were telling that this is far better, which is how we choose our customers to make them happy generally. So these are like 4 of our case studies which we took it just to showcase the variety of things which we have been done. This differs from one to another. One is accordingly the movement to the Azure. The other one is basically coding standpoint. The other one is not even realizing they have a performance impact, but however they were trying to be happy with it. And then the 4th one is essentially on the delivery standpoint of the presentation layers. So that was the case studies in it. Right. Now, moving on to the next slide, I would like to invite our Chief Solutions Architect, Mr. Suresh.
I would touch upon this topic. Please move to the next slide.
Brilliant. Yeah, sorry.
As one of the case studies we explained, we have done almost a year of analysis and a complete commissioning of Refactoring Cloud with Epicor ERP, which is available for our esteemed customers in Middle East region. So in case with the prevailing COVID situation, if you intend to move from your existing on-premises, you may opt for moving your system with Refactoring Cloud. That is something you can think. But this is something our team has put together for almost a year in terms of setting up a very clear disaster recovery, a business continuity planning, a very thorough upgrade plans every 15 days, every 30 days. The major, minor, and hot fixes would be implemented in your infrastructure. A complete management of your infrastructure along with the Epicor instance would be taken care by our cloud team. So this has been time tested. This is hosted in Dubai with a data center, MoroHub. MoroHub is a back office for government of Dubai. So from a data compliance standpoint, this complies to all the security norms, and we would be happy to extend this service to all our customers who are interested to move their on-prem instance into a cloud-based instance. This comes with a world-class security, with the end-to-end security model, with a very clear tools for testing your load, testing your regression points, and provide you a seamless experience. So that is something we have on our hand to offer to you. This comes, as I told you, with a very clear business continuity planning, with a disaster management planning. So as a customer, you wouldn't have a headache to manage the infrastructure on your own. So the whole infrastructure is completely planned by Refactoring team in conjunction with Epicor Cloud team, and we commissioned this Epicor ERP on our cloud for our esteemed customers in Middle East region. And you will stay current with a latest release patch without you intervening manually on a periodic basis. Your backups are completely taken care by our engineering team. Your restoration process is guaranteed, and we operate with a pre-agreed world-class SLAs and OLAs to provide you a guaranteed uptime of 99.99. That's what we offer on this particular instance. Moving on to the next slide, Nitish, if you may, we can help you out with the performance tuning and cloud-related queries and all the evaluation and assessment-related stuff. If you can write to the email ID noted in the system, info@rhinix.com, we would be happy to revert back to you, and we would work with you, understand on how we can collaborate further. This can be taken care. And also, we would like to provide you, next slide, please. We would also provide you recommendation and implementation methodology and how we can tune the performance of the system as we go forward. The upcoming discussions and the online discussions in the current crisis, most of the people work from home, and how we can leverage effectively this situation is something we want to contemplate and provide you our insights, as we have been doing a lot of research with our in-house team and how the world is moving in terms of the supply chain and procurement globally, how this is seen post-COVID situation with think tanks, industry thought leaders. We would be reaching you 7th of May. Stay tuned and please do participate, especially with your procurement or a management or executive people, so that you get a global perspective on this topic. And also, we would see with the prevailing situation how we can help you a very clear alternate for a physical document with a clear document management capabilities, and how do you have a virtual office instead of a physical office, and how a classic time tested traditional office migrates into an automated situation. These two are the immediate topics that is happening on 7th May and 12th May. Stay tuned for our upcoming online events. And I would request our participants to have your queries posted on the Q&A panel so that we would be glad to take them forward. I would read the first question, which is from Danya. What is the impact of customization BPMs on Epicor ERP? Nitish, would you want to take this forward?
Yep. Daniel, thanks for joining today. I appreciate your time. As I was explaining on my slide where I was just talking about, there could be a potential performance impacts if you do not design the BAQs and BPMs in the way that we are supposed to do. We go with an agenda called as widgets only, as internally in my team and the rest of the teams. So essentially what we generally does is we try to utilize the framework wherever we can, because we also know and understand the fact that it's really a framework which is available for us to customize from end to end. So it's so important that how do we choose it? What kind of, when you give us a requirement, we generally qualifies that, well, it has to go to as a BPM or probably a customization and that sort of a thing. So it starts from that planning itself. So the same query, when you put in the transaction directive, that in the method directive can give you a different performance. So it is important that we review the requirement and then put it in the proper places, else it will definitely impact the performance. If that answers your question. Do we have more?
Yeah, thank you, Nitish. We have more questions. We have designed, this is a question from Suresh. We have designed a BAQ for getting the transaction part of the particular GL and its part transactions. The BAQ is taking a bit time to show the results, approx 3 minutes to load the data. Is this something related to the performance tuning, or is it something regular tendency?
It is a wonderful question. I'm more than happy to answer that. It is brilliant. In fact, the reason, this is where I'm recommending you to read out my blog, because I talk in the blog about this, the CPU cost. I don't want to get really deeper into it because we have a limited time, but however, I'm going to tell you, this is where you need to go to the execution plan of your BAQ. That will give you to understand the fact that what is the cost you are trying to incur on the CPU when you do execute a query. Similar, like it creates an SQL plan. I understand that many people don't utilize it in the Epicor world, but it's so important that if you go to the SQL plans, which is getting created, you will be in a position to understand that what is actually causing it. And it maybe there are two possibilities that the join between those could basically create an issue, or maybe it's trying to do any sort of a subqueries. Or so if you look into the execution plan, you will understand which is costing the difference, and then probably that will help you to tune your BAQs accordingly. Do we have more
questions? Thank you, Nitish. We have another question. What are the critical success factors for a Epicor performance improvement project? We have this question from Jose.
Sri, can I take this? Is Rama here?
Yeah, please, Rama.
Thanks, Jose. Thanks for joining this webinar. You know, years ago, when I was young and when my hair was still black, when I was new to IT, we were in an AS400 system where we had got into many meetings where we had a performance crisis. And at that time, me and the rest of my team, we gave it a very technical approach, defining the problem in a technical way and presenting the solutions in a very technical way. Of course, the business guys, they were courteous enough to sit through the meetings, but we left them confused. After all these years, it is my humble opinion that the whole performance issue is a socio-technical issue. At the end of the day, users would like to come to office, open the systems, do their data processing, run their reports on time or without any undue crashes, and go home. They don't like the systems to leave them in an anxious state. So that is the socio part. But if you look at it, the underlying material is technical. Operating system, SQLs, networking, these are all the technical materials. So performance issue is a socio-technical issue. So coming to the key success factors, because it is a socio-technical issue, I think the problem definition is really important. It takes time to get there. In our real life example, where with the leading cement supplier, it took us almost 3 days to get to the problem definition, which everybody both in the customer IT and on their business side agreed with. But that's very important, as they say, well begun, half done. And then comes the analysis, the technical people. And I think one critical aspect for the technical people is that they should empathize with the end users and the customer IT management. It is that empathy which will help them to plumb the depths of the technical side to find the issues and the fixes. And lastly comes the presentation. I think that's very important. We need to present the results and the recommendations in a very simple manner so that the customers, they have trust in the results, and they get a good idea about what will the benefits be, so that they can take it and implement it. So a solid problem definition, a bit of empathy for the end users from the technical people, and a good presentation. Those are the three things.
Thank you, Rama. We have 3 more questions, and we are almost having another 9 minutes. So if we can close the 3, that'll be great. The next question from Arjun is, what has been the cost impact of the changes in real life example? Or are there any benchmarks? I mean, again, Rama, you would want to take this forward?
Yeah, thanks, Sri. Thanks, Arjun, for joining. Yeah, I think in our experience, we have seen that many of the resolutions have been in getting the fundamentals right. For example, we have seen environments where the SQL was not maintained properly, and a very simple index rebuild contributed a long way in improving the performance. So, the fundamentals, the investments, I think if you get your CPU wrong, then probably, you will have to spend money. Other than that, I think the rest of all is changeable easily and easily scalable. And if people are going to deploy it in Azure, we have seen a pattern of people always choosing a premium SSD. So, the storage is not an issue. But, the investments have been very, very, very small. But most of the fixes have been on the fundamental processes and on the fundamental maintenance side.
Thank you, Rama. We have 2 more questions. Another interesting question from Mr. Kurian is, how easy is to migrate on the current on-premise version to cloud? That's a question from Mr. Kurian. Nitish, Rama, would one of you want to take this point?
Yeah, definitely. There are a couple things to touch upon this topic, obviously. Definitely not complicated in terms of taking the database to put it in the cloud, but however, we also has got this tenancy models that offers in the cloud, and that's where the differentiation comes. So once we review your current, so essentially what happens is we have the tools that will run, we call it as analyzers, and that tools will run in your databases to understand essentially what kind of changes you have been done in your current systems, which would suit, because it is so important that when you get into the cloud, we will support all of your customizations, but it's also important that we need to review your code, that whether it qualifies to get into the cloud. So apart from the changes, apart from we call it as something unique business components, those are the typical changes that is done in your databases. So if that is qualified, then I don't think anything else is stopping you to migrate into it. So it's a matter of fact that you can possibly put your information. But however, we do have methodologies in terms of it, in terms of project management, in terms of migrations, etc. Also, it's important to review the features which is currently available for you that need to be get mapped into the cloud. That is how I would define an answer, if that makes sense to you.
Thank you, Nitesh. We have two more questions. Both of them are kind of connected. I can take these two questions.
Sure.
Can you help us, or should we get back to our partners or Epicor for such performance tuning services? Question number one. And second is, this is connected. Is performance tuning part of the regular AMC that we have signed up for? It's a very interesting question because this current population, the audience bucket, there's a combination of our existing customers, probably, who have another partners being implementing Epicor for them. It could be Epicor directly. So here is a value differentiator. Performance tuning is, there are tools, regular tools that is provided to the partners. Certain tools are provided to Epicor. On top of that, Reinbrucker has our own tools in terms of analyzing the outcomes, because in one of the case studies Rama was explaining, the output of the PDT was around 10 million lines of observation, and it's not humanly possible to go over all these observations and arrive at a meaningful result. So we use our own natural language processing techniques. We have our own tools to make a very valid understanding of the outputs from the tools that's given by Epicor. So you can write to Epicor, and alternatively you can write to Reinbruck as well. We would be happy to work with you, provide you as a part of consulting engagement, how we can help you in terms of improving the performance. So definitely we'll be glad to support you in this front. Thank you so much. If there are no further questions, we are having 4 more minutes. We can take 1 or 2 questions at the max, and we'll be able to move forward. Nitish and Rama, thank you very much for your active participation. Thanks a lot for installing the audience with your insights. Thank you very much, Team Reinbrucker, for putting this together and providing a very clear guidelines on the technical front. Once again, thank you all, and stay safe with the current situation on COVID, and stay tuned for our upcoming events on supply chain, global supply chain procurement information, and also the virtual office and document management systems from Reinbrucker. Thank you very much. Have a great day ahead. Thank you very much. Stay safe. This is Srikanth signing off from Reinbrucker.
Cheers, everybody. This is Nitish. Thank you so much.